Hi, everybody. This is Nathan White, candidate for Palm Bay City Council Seat 4, bringing you a brief recap of this past City Council meeting. Just a couple big points to hit, really. Under public hearings, at the behest of Councilman Kenny Johnson, the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 169, Land Development Code, they withdrew or removed the entire subchapter of Green Development Initiative Program in order to replace it with language for the provisions for voluntary low impact development design standards. Now, this wouldn't be much news if it weren't for the fact that the difference is really a phrase apparently City Council is not a fan of, giving council really a blank check to give developers any incentive they could possibly want or think of when it comes to their development. They have the ability to decide what kind of incentive they would want to use, who gets what, because it lists a couple of types of incentives, but then ends it by simply saying, or something else. Very end of the proposed language being added here under subsection 4 at the end there, the developer should adhere to the LID designs and standards as contained, etc. May be entitled basically as an incentive to a density or intensity bonus, more floor space than allowed under the current or proposed future land use designation or zoning, greater height, a reduction in fees, credits, or granting of other incentives as authorized by council. That is a verbal blank check that I'm trying to be on this council, and I don't want this council to have that power, even if I win. That's not something the council should have, the ability to, at the end, well, it says granting of other incentives as authorized, so if we decide on any incentive, we can do it. That is not an appropriate power, and it is ripe for misuse and abuse. The other one I wanted to hit on, a pretty big one, two big ones actually. One is under public hearing number 8. This was a resolution granting approval of a preliminary development plan for a proposed regional activity center to be known as Three Forks Mixed Use. Now, this is the development that is planned to be built directly across the street from Fred Poppy Regional Park. 124.5-ish acres to be used for a few hundred single-family homes, a couple hundred multifamily units like townhomes, and then I think 3 or 4 four-story apartment buildings, and I think it was a 150 unit or lot RV park. And one of the biggest controversies about this is that this is an RV park, a private RV park, being developed and approved by council across the street from the city park, where council has already allocated money towards building a city-owned RV park directly across the street. So there were some people who showed up to the meeting specifically to talk about that issue and to voice their concerns or their disapproval, but they were met with a bit of disappointment because the item was continued to the September 15th council meeting. And that would normally be all there is to say if it weren't for the fact that, and I asked council about this in the public comment section following, near the end of the meeting, but got absolutely no answer. I asked them why it is that item stayed on the agenda until agenda revisions during the meeting, when the correspondence regarding that development, which was attached online, it's all public record, shows that the developer requested that continuance on Tuesday. Item number 8 in public hearings that was being continued to September 15th. I'm wondering why it is that, according to the correspondence between City Hall and the developer, we've known that this resolution wasn't going to be voted on at tonight's meeting since August 4th. it was August 16th, Tuesday morning, that the official request for continuance to the September 15th meeting was sent over by Jake Wise. But also it was August 4th at 1:37 p.m. Where they requested it be continued to the September 1st meeting. That means it's been since August 4th that we knew it wasn't going to be on tonight's agenda, and yet that wasn't amended at all until the meeting began. They've known it wasn't going to be on the August 18th agenda since August 4th, but they left it there, essentially deceiving residents, leading residents to come out to the council meeting, take time out of their day, maybe get off work early since the council meetings start earlier now, so that they could voice their concern about this development, only to find out, no, actually, not this time. Gonna have to give that a couple of weeks, a few weeks actually, before we talk about that. That's not fair to residents. That is not fair to the residents in the area or any resident in the city concerned about this development, or any resident that's simply concerned with transparency in our local government. That feels deceptive, and that's not okay. The last thing that I want to touch on was pretty big. This was actually under consent, but was pulled from consent for discussion. There was a consideration of reallocating American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA funds, for the building of an emergency operations center within City Hall's new Building E that they're talking about constructing. $2 million. That's not the problem here, actually. So, I'm going to get a little bit cynical here, so forgive me. I try not to. Sometimes I do anyway. This time I'm aware I'm going to, but it's for good reason. I'm a bit cynical on this one because Councilman Kenny Johnson pulled this from consent for discussion because he brought up that he was thinking of making a motion to table this item from the agenda until the September 1st council meeting, because there's going to be a workshop in between where we are supposed to discuss options and possibilities for funding of the underfunded and understaffed fire department and police department. And he wanted to wait until after that to discuss whether or not there's a possibility these funds could be used towards the fire or police issue. The city manager, the deputy city manager, and the city attorney had to all then explain that of the, I think it was 18 or $19 million of ARPA funds, there's really two categories of those funds, and those different categories can be used for only certain things. The category that could have been used for fire department or police department are issues there, building of we could have built, one or two of our 3 missing fire stations. That would fall into the category of revenue lost. That totaled $10 million of the ARPA funds. So $10 million of ARPA funds is what could have been used for those issues. And they had to explain to council and to Councilman Johnson that council had already allocated all $10 million to other things before they thought to ask of whether or not it could be used for our fire department or our police department. And the reason I say I'm not convinced of his intentions when pulling that is because Councilman Johnson spearheaded a fair number of or at least appeared to spearhead a fair number of the things that the money was spent on, which aren't all bad things. In fact, one thing that I think is one of the best choices we've made in a long time was about just under $800,000 for body cams for the police department. That's great. I'm 100% behind that. I could go off talking about all the reasons that's good. But that was less than $1 million of the $10 million. They allocated $2 million to Building E, the new City Hall building that they're talking about. $2 million to an upgrade to the city's financial system. And then $5 million again to Building E. And let's see, 2, 5, and then they're talking about this extra $2 million also going to Building E. So between body cams, the finance system upgrade, Building E, $10 million already spent or allocated, not all spent, and they didn't even realize it. I encourage you to go back and watch that video. I might include a clip because watching the realization hit the people on that dais was upsetting. It would be amusing if it wasn't so upsetting. So $10 million that could have been used to build one or two of our 3 missing fire stations was spent apparently pretty literally before the council realized they'd spent it or allocated it. So now they're faced with the option of, do we pretend this conversation didn't happen, or do we look back at some of the things we've allocated it for and decide if it's more important or more urgent to spend it on our missing fire stations or our police officers? Because the body cams, that needs to stay. That also was a fraction of the money. But $7 or so million for building E, and then they're trying to take another $2 million also for building E from that other category. At that point, you'd be looking at half, more than half, of the entirety of ARPA funds given to the city by the federal government for coronavirus relief being used to build City Hall's new building. This is why you see those hashtags: end waste, restore trust. Because this is not something I trust. I don't think this is something you trust, but you can speak for yourself. If you want more information on either of these items or on any of the others that appeared on the agenda, you can, for one thing, see the agenda and the video at palmbayflorida.org. For the agenda, you can do /agenda-minutes to see the agenda. Or there's another option there. When you go to that page for watching the meeting itself, you can skip to different parts in the video of the meeting by clicking on the agenda item. That is helpful. But if you have any questions, you want to dig deeper into any of these, please let me know in the comments below, wherever you're seeing this video, Facebook, YouTube, wherever it may be. And I'd be happy to answer those for you. For the moment, I'll just thank you all for watching. Thank you all for paying attention. We can't let these things continue to happen in the dark. If they're going to push forward and do them anyway, you can be sure that we're going to make sure they do it in the light and have to be held responsible for their actions. And I do believe that they will feel that responsibility coming towards them with November approaching. I've gotten several phone calls during early voting, people questioning, you will not see my name on the ballot on Tuesday or earlier if you're early voting, because my opponent and I are the only ones going for the seat. There, we will not be there for the primary. We will only be on the ballot in November. That is November 8th. So be sure to get out and vote on Tuesday. Early voting just closed up, but you can get out there on Tuesday, make your voice heard, and then I'll see you again at those polls on November 8th, hopefully to vote Nathan White for Palm Bay City Council seat 4. But as always, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you. God bless Palm Bay.